Then it looks like Bryson, you wanted that one as well. So
Yes, sir, there she goes.
hello and welcome to episode 179 of section 138. I'm your host, Mark Colley, as always, joined by Bryson and Jacob. How are you guys?
Doing good, Mark. January 23rd, we know that there is another meeting coming up in a couple days, or at least tomorrow from the day that we're recording, between the two sides. And fingers crossed, it's in person in New York, and you can only hope that we make progress.
Yes, but we're not going to talk about that today. We have different things scheduled for today. But before we get to any of that, Jacob, how are you?
I am actually very excited because today we are finally, I'm not even going to say those three letters. We have something different planned, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Very exciting.
Okay, well, as you can probably tell from the episode of this podcast, the name of this podcast, we are drafting the best Blue Jay game since 2015. And if any of our listeners watch or listen to John Boy and Jake Radio, they do something similar to this. So we decided we would do it with our own Blue Jays topic. Basically, the way it works is that the three of us are, as it sounds like, we're basically doing a fantasy draft of the top Blue Jay games since 2015. We're going to go around and do a snake draft. It's going to be 7 rounds to start with. We may expand it further if we decide we have a lot of games left over. And basically at the end, we're going to be building essentially what is our own personal team of what we think the best games for the Blue Jays since 2015 is. We have a couple rules before we begin to make it a little bit more exciting for each of us. The first one is that you can have no more than 2 picks from one season. So this just prevents you, or I guess now that we're at 7 rounds, let's make it 3 picks to make it a little bit easier. No more than 3 picks from one season. And then you also have to pick at least one game from the 2017 to 2019 era. And this just makes it so that we don't just pick the games from the good seasons from the 2020, 2021, as well as the 15 and 16 seasons. So those are the rules. And I think everyone understands how it's going to work. But before that, we have to decide what the order is we're drafting in. So we're going to do this with everyone writing down a random number, and then we're going to go random number generator 1 to 100. So everyone, if you write down your number. Okay, everyone got it?
I'm giving myself, I'm thinking, I'm trying to concentrate.
Got to get the good luck.
Yeah.
It is truly random. I have it up on Google right now.
I'll tell you what, my number.
Any fishy behavior will be flagged, but I believe that you are as honest as possible. Oh, God, no ink.
Wow. Bryson screwing up already.
Yeah,
Here, if you just have your number, you just want to say your number right now, because both Bryson, Jacob, and I have it written.
Can I see it? No, I'm kidding. Okay, let me try.
This is way too small.
That's not going to work.
I got 38.
Hopefully you can
I am
see
55.
this. I have 8
I
because
cannot see.
number
Okay,
8 in
we
the
all
hockey
went-
draft was perfect. So
We all went relatively
Ah.
low. The number is 56.
Yes.
So
yes.
Bryson, you get to choose where you're picking first. Do you want the wraparound pick, number 3, or do you want first overall pick?
Oh, I'm going first overall.
Okay. And then I guess I'm next. I'll take the wraparound.
Okay.
I'll screw Jacob over with the middle pick.
Oh, you
So
got
with
you
that-
put Jacob on the spot now.
Bryson, you're now the first pick.
All right. So
Who do you want?
with the first pick in this fantasy draft, kind of fantasy draft type from the best games from 2015 to 2021, I will proudly select from the 2015 postseason, Game 5 of the ALDS, the Jose Bautista bat flip. Now, in those years, it's hard to argue another exciting game from that time. We all know the stakes of it. We all know how special that season was. What made it even more special was the stakes of the actual game in the postseason. A go-ahead home run after a crazy 7th inning that took over an hour. We knew the stakes, and Jose Bautista came up, a go-ahead home run, which led the Jays off to the ALCS. And just for that reason alone, I think that's fair in terms of that being the best game from those years of 2015 to 2021, because obviously in 2020, we all know the Jays lasted about a couple days max. 2021, unfortunately, we did not get to the postseason. 2016 was a postseason run, of course, but nothing was as special as that 2015 postseason run. So that was fun times to be a Jays fan, and I am proud to have the bat flip on my team.
Yeah, this was a no-brainer. I don't know about you, Jacob, but this was the 1A on my list. And I knew if I got first overall pick, I would be taking it. But of course, I had to go with the wraparound, even though I could have gone second and got what I think is probably going to be a hands down number 2 pick. But I guess we'll see with Jacob's next pick.
So I'll tell you what, the bat flip was not guaranteed to be my first overall pick, but my second overall pick. I'm just saying, I have a few on here that might surprise you guys, but in terms of second overall, I think it's obvious. Edwin Encarnacion's walk-off against the Baltimore
Yes.
Orioles, October 5th, 2016. So the year after, that was it to me. Like this was the pinnacle of the Blue Jays 2015 and 16 run. You have Bautista doing it in 2015. You have their other slugger in 2016 doing it. And this was it just if this was the year they had won the World Series, you could look at a moment like this and say this was the thing that got them there. And obviously they went to the division series, swept the Rangers, capped off by Odor forgetting how to throw a ball. But in terms of that game, this just has to be the best moment of really the last almost full decade of Blue Jays baseball. And I don't think a lot of people would disagree. Like this was the right person at the plate at the right time, and it turned Toronto into an absolute frenzy.
Okay, so this has gone exactly how I expected it to go so far. I don't know about what you thought, Bryson, but my number 1 and 2 picks were the bat flip and the walk-off.
Yeah, and I'm sure unless you decide to surprise us in the world, I feel like the third pick is also kind of obvious, but you're also going back to back here, so you can be creative how you approach this. But yeah, definitely for pick number 2 from Jacob, that was a no-brainer for me, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now I have the difficult task of making 2 picks. I know what the number. I'll say the first one is the game 3 of the 2016 ALDS, and that's what you were just talking about, Jacob, with Odor throwing the ball away and the Donaldson mad dash home. And plus just extra factor, you get the revenge against the Rangers after you have Odor punching Bautista earlier in the season in May when the Blue Jays were playing the Rangers. It's just picture perfect. You couldn't write it any better for the Blue Jays. And it's definitely one of those games that lives on in a lot of people's minds and one of those highlights that just echoes inside your brain forever because it's incredible to watch. Another thing I do want to mention about this draft, and we were just talking about it, but for anyone listening, like you are building kind of your team of games. In this case, it's games. Other drafts we might do might be players or transactions or whatever, but you're building the best games. So you do want to kind of have some diversity in terms of what you're picking. So you don't want to pick all walk-offs, all different types of things. But I think with the number 4 pick of the draft, my second pick with the wraparound pick, I'm going to take Steve Pearce's walk-off grand slam on July 30th, 2017, against the Los Angeles Angels. And the reason I'm taking this is a couple of reasons. First off, I think it's the best pick that you can have. It's the best game from 2017 to 2019. I think it's the best pick hands down in that era. So I wanted to get that squared away early so I'm not stuck with a crappy game later on from that period of time. And then the second reason is just a pretty awesome game. Like it's something that would never happen again in baseball history. And, you know, previously, I think the record for walk-off grand slams in one season is 2 prior to what Steve Pearce did. And it was done in 1 year, let alone what Steve Pearce did in 1 week. And the second one was just even more crazy than the first because it was the biggest 9th inning comeback in franchise history. And it was the second walk-off grand slam in 4 days. Like you just can't write anything better than that. So that's what I'm going to take as my second pick in the round. And I guess we go back to Jacob for his second pick.
So I have a bunch of ones that I think after you get the first couple out of the way, you can kind of argue that they're all pretty good. Like definitely there's a ranking, but I was sitting here, I was seriously contemplating it. And I think for me, it has to be, this came from 2017. So a bit of a darker time for the Blue Jays. However, I think one of the coolest moments was in St. Louis early in that season. I think it was either April or May, but when Chris Coughlin dove over Yadier Molina, and I don't even know how to describe it. Like it almost looked as he had the Grand Theft Auto cheats on, and he was coming home, easily should have been tagged out, but he jumped over Yadier Molina and then just like headfirst dove into home plate and ended up scoring. And I think that's just, it's one of those things. It wasn't from a player that was like a huge name in Blue Jay history or even of that team or on that team of that year. but it's one of those moments that still lives on. And it's one of those things to me that it was a dark time for the Blue Jays. They were coming off of the highs of the playoffs and obviously took a couple years to rebuild. But if you're looking at one of those really crazy moments, I think that definitely has to be one of them for me, because frankly, I don't think that we're ever going to see anything like that again. I mean, it would be cool too, but I mean, this isn't, it's not the Olympics. It's a baseball game. So we're definitely not going to be seeing any crazy gymnastic type moves. But to me, it's just one of those things that stand out to me, because as you'll see throughout the rest of my list, there were a lot of individual moments throughout games that just were very, very memorable to me. And this was one of them.
You want
That
to
was
react first,
nowhere
Mark?
on that was nowhere on my board. I think
Yeah, you go
for me,
first.
there's an important distinction between top games and top moments, and we're not drafting highlights. So that's why I didn't put the Chris Coughlin dive on my list. There's like something else that popped up when I was doing research was I don't know, like Darwin Barney's slide. If you guys remember that, when he was
Yes,
diving into
yes,
it was
yes.
either second or third base and he came up like 5 feet short and just crawled there. That's a hilarious moment that lives in my brain forever, but it's a moment. It's like a highlight. It's not a game. So this is where the fun kind of comes in with a draft and a broad topic. You get to distinguish between these things, but that's why I didn't totally consider those things for my board. Whereas I was thinking of the game on the whole. I don't know about you, Bryson.
Yeah, I had around 29 different games, or I guess you can make the argument they're moments, but the Coughlin one did not make my list. So Jacob, in my opinion, thank you, because I have just stolen my next, and I got to go back to back. So now technically back to back, I am very happy with where I stand. Mark, I'm sure you might be a little bit happy too, because that wasn't on your board. So clearly you're going to get something that you didn't think you were going to get. And again, that's the best part about these types of drafts. So I'm very excited for my next two picks. Want me to do them now? All righty. So we will. I know my next two picks. I just don't know which one should go first, but let's change it up. Let's go to 2019. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's go to May 14th, 2019 in San Francisco, California. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s very first home run. Again, I know it's kind of like a moment. However, in this case, I make more of an argument because we all know this was Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s first major league home run. It happens in San Francisco. He's already up in the big leagues for a couple weeks. You can also make the argument and maybe take his first game. But in this case, because in his first game, I think he went 1 for 4 his MLB debut. This just, to me, him hitting his first home run, kind of showing signs of what was to come for the next, I guess, foreseeable future for this team. The next, lots of years ahead with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's why him hitting the home run in San Francisco is definitely a highlight point. And I believe that also led them to the win that night. And of course, especially too in 2019. And I think in this moment too, you can make a lot of arguments similar to this, just because 2019 was the year of the kids. It was the year of the transition. We know 2017 was disappointing. We know 2018 was the beginning of the teardown. And of course, 2019 was also very ugly. However, 2019 is the year where everyone began to come up at different points of the year. And we all got to see different glimpses of them at different points of the year. And for me, this is definitely one of the best games. And at least if you look back on 2019 as well, probably one of the best games, or, one of the most exciting games I definitely watched that day, because it was pretty crazy in terms of, I guess, the internet, social media, the reaction, even from the commentators when he did go deep in his very first game at San Francisco too, as well. So that's why for me, it's one of the special moments that I experienced, at least in these types of years. And that is also my one pick from that era too. So I'm glad I got that out of the way, and maybe we'll see more throughout the draft. I don't want to spoil my next picks.
What makes that game even better, and I guess I shouldn't argue for you because this builds up your team instead of my team, but he had 2 home runs in that game. So, I mean, his first career home run and then another home run that was in the 6th inning, it looks like. Yeah, it was exciting. I'll be honest, I didn't have it on my board. I did have his debut on my board, and probably shouldn't have said that because I might be taking it later, but yeah.
That is completely fair. Yeah. What about you, Jacob?
Well, when you said Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in San Francisco, at first I thought you were talking about something completely different, but thankfully you didn't. Now I can snatch that one up. But I will say it is definitely a good a good moment. It was a brutal time, I think, for the Blue Jays, but to see things like this, even though that was kind of an individual moment, it's more of the game behind that. And at this point, this is something that helps the team win. So it is fair.
Alrighty, with that, I'm back to back on this one. And we're going to go back to 2015 with the next pick. We're going to go back to the exact date here was the Blue Jays clinch the AL East on September 30th, 2015 in Baltimore. That final out, we all remember LaTroy Hawkins was pitching. And of course, Russell Martin, I believe, was behind the plate. And what made it so special was, again, we know how special the 2015 season was, the turnaround. But the one key detail is, especially too, at the time in 2015, it was the longest playoff drought by any North American sports team. That came to an end. It was the first time since 1993 the Blue Jays obviously clinched the Division One, and number two, they clinched a playoff berth. That was definitely one of the highlights of that season, and the way it ended as well, because them clinching the division happened at one of the last games of the year. And I think that night was probably one of the most exciting nights as well, because you knew that this team was poised or had the potential to go on a playoff run. We know that they did. And unfortunately, they came up short. We don't want to talk about that last game. But, at that point, when that moment happened, we got to see a banner at that time added to Rogers Center the next year. AL East champions 2015. We know in baseball, especially, clinching the division could be one of the hardest things to do. So that's why I thought that is a special moment, one of my favorite moments from that season alone. And again, from this era, I couldn't pass up on that pick. I still had it available.
Not on my board. I don't know
Wow.
about you, Jacob.
It was not. I think that I have one that I'm going to use next that I don't think's on any of your two's boards, but this is interesting. I think seeing the two of us or the three of us really have completely different outlooks on this.
Yeah, we definitely have different ideas of what the best games are. Because for me,
Well,
I guess like that game was awesome, but it doesn't stick in my mind as a defining moment from that season. But okay, I guess apparently to you it was. In your mind it is. So it's interesting to see how we look at it differently.
20 plus years is a long time for a
It
playoff
is.
drought. And that's what made me pick it. It's not like if it's like a team winning the division every single year, like a team like the Dodgers, I guess, in the NL West, maybe it probably isn't here. But the fact that ended the drought by any North American sports team at that time, we're including any of those big four professional sports in the continent, that is why it's up there for me.
All right, it's your pick now, Jacob.
I was hoping you were going to remind me because I, for some reason, got a little lost there. But my next pick, this is the one I don't think either of you guys have it on your boards, but July 26th, 2016, the Blue Jays walk off the San Diego Padres in the 12th inning off of a wild pitch. And to me, this game, it started off as like a regular interleague play. The Blue Jays, you're against the Padres, blah, 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 whatever. They ended up going into extra innings. They were down by 2 in the top half of the 12th. They allowed, I can't remember who exactly was pitching, but somebody allowed a 2-run home run. And then Devin Travis, with the game tied, game on the line, after a 12-minute at bat, gets over to third base, and then on a wild pitch, bolts home, scores the winning run, and the Blue Jays end up winning that game. And that was, I think at that point, the Blue Jays were first in their division. They kind of fell off towards the end of August, and in September they had a brutal month. But this was, I think, the best we had seen the Blue Jays probably since, or at least that season, since the playoff push in 2015. And I think this was probably the best team of those 2 years, or the best stretch for that team of the 2 years, because that summer was just absolutely fantastic for them. But to me, this has just always stuck out as one of the few games that whenever I'm bored and I want to look back on old memories, especially sports memories, this is definitely one of those games that I look back on, because to win off of a wild pitch, like we don't really see that often. And when you do, when you're at home to do it, when you come back from a 2-run deficit from the previous inning, it makes it a great moment. And, I think now I might have to cut off the 2015 and 16 moments, because we're starting to see a lot better moments in recent years. But this one, when you look at what ended up happening that season, to me, when you're able to come back from that type of deficit, it's something that was very memorable.
Yeah, you've got 2 from 2016, 1 from 2017. And Bryson, you have 2 from 2015, 1 from 2019, and I've got 1 2016, 1 2017. So yeah, that's another one was not on my board. So
Yeah.
maybe this is going to be easier as we head into the later rounds than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't thinking about that. I do remember it, and I was watching the highlights when I was researching, but to me, it wasn't something that like stuck in my mind at all. So I just didn't include it. But it's a good pick. I respect it.
I don't want to brag, and I hate bragging, but I really like where this team sits for me right now. I don't know about you, Mark, but yeah, that one, I know I had it on my original list, but when I had to cut it down, it did not make the final cut. So that one definitely did surprise me though, Jacob. But again, I like the creativity, and clearly for all of us, not. I think majority of our picks so far haven't been on each other's boards, so I like the unpredictability.
Yeah, I thought I would be having to furiously, because I have a spreadsheet with all the games I got in. I thought I'd be furiously blacking out lines, but so far it's just the 3 top lines that we had with the 3 first picks with the postseason games from 2015 and 2016. So I'm pretty confident about my board as well. And with this round, I think takes a big step for what my team is going to do. But the first pick that I'm going to take, I'm going to step out on a limb here and take the first 2021 game, and I'm going to take the Blue Jays' first home game back at the Rogers Center after being away for so long. And both of you look frustrated. So I'm glad I got that out of the way now. I just think, I mean, clearly both of you know how important it was for the Blue Jays because both of you wanted to pick this, but it's such an emotional game. You watch it back and I mean, right from the very beginning, you have Charlie Montoyo crying on the field because it's so emotional to be back at the Rogers Center and back in front of the home crowd. And then you have the crowd that's amazing throughout the game. And this is a point in the season when the Blue Jays are picking up steam. It's right next to the trade deadline. And then to cap it all off, the very last play of the game, Santiago Espinal makes that incredible over-the-shoulder grab, running into the outfield, and Bo Bichette's running into the outfield at the same time. They congratulate each other, and the crowd goes crazy in a way we haven't seen it do in a couple years because they haven't been at the Rogers Center for so long. So that's what I'm taking with the first pick, or I guess the last pick of the third round, and my third pick. And then moving on to my next pick, I guess we can just do them together and then we can talk about what you guys think. I'm going back to 2015 and taking Marco Estrada's near perfect game against the Tampa Bay Rays at Tropicana Field. And it looks like, Bryson, you wanted that one as well. So I'm happy I'm taking them now. He nearly made baseball history. Plus, there was that epic catch by Josh Donaldson. You just put those two things together and it's an instant classic. So those are my 2 picks for this wraparound for me.
I gotta say, I really wish you didn't take that home opener, or the third home opener of that season. But I'm not gonna give anything away. You didn't take one of my other picks, so I respect the home opener, but I'm confident in the one that you did not snatch.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to be there. You guys know the very first game back, it was emotional. 15,000 people was the limit at the time when they first started, but we knew it sounded pretty much like a sold out Rogers Center. So that game definitely up there in terms of games I've attended to of all time. And of course, the Marco Estrada near perfect game that was on my board. However, I was not planning to use the next round, but of course now I got to readjust later on in the draft. And yeah, that's the one thing too, as much as he almost threw that perfect game, the fact that Donaldson made that catch, I remember where I was too. I wasn't home, but I remember I was watching the game on my phone and I absolutely screamed in public when that happened. And everyone looked at me like I had 3 heads. So that was a memorable moment for me as well. But yeah, and that was also before the playoff run, before the trade deadline. This was early on in the year. And a game like that at Tropicana Field, the house of horrors for the Jays, especially during those couple of years, you saw 2 good things, or at least one overall great start from Marco Estrada, near perfect. And of course, you saw one of, a catch that we haven't seen since, in terms of, at least from the Jays too, diving into the crowd. That's what made it so special in Josh Donaldson's MVP year. So I really am a fan of that pick, though. I'm really a fan of both of those picks.
All right, Jacob, you're up again.
All right. So, as I mentioned, you didn't take this one that I was looking at. And at the end of that homestand that you mentioned, the Blue Jays had a series against the Boston Red Sox. And I know Bryson's mad about this one. However, Blue Jays had a terrible start from Hyunjin Ryu. We're down by like 4 or 5 towards the middle innings of the game, claw their way back into the game, down by 2 in the bottom of the 8th inning, 2 outs. Alejandro Kirk, no, it was Reese McGuire, wasn't it? One of the catchers works Matt Barnes for a walk. McGuire, yes. And then George Springer comes up and just sends the Red Sox packing, even though it technically wasn't a walk-off. George Springer ended the game for the Blue Jays at that moment. They capped off a 9-2 homestand. First of all, they're their first homestand in Toronto since 2019. He caps this off with a huge win. And I remember watching this from the back room of my work and had to convince everybody that nothing bad had just happened because it started screaming. But to me, that was, there are a few games from 2021 that actually made my list. Surprisingly, not as many as you would think, but this one, I had to snatch it because this was easily probably my favorite moment of the entire season. And it capped off a fantastic homestand against a division rival. And that was the last time the Blue Jays and Red Sox would play each other. And considering that they were going into or coming into that homestand, they were not in the playoff picture at all, but you go 9-2 over 11 games instead of 8-3 or whatever it could have been the case. You've now completely changed the outlook of your season. And say they didn't make the playoffs all you want, it was still an entertaining season. And it was one that without moments like this would not have even come close to happening.
Yeah, it was on my board. I was also tempted to put the I think it was the day before with the doubleheader against the Red Sox, and there was a Marcus Semien walk-off home run in the first game when it was like 0-0, and then he hit I think it was the first pitch of what I guess would have been the 7th inning, and he just hit a solo home run, 1-0 win. And then also the day prior to that, which was I think it was a Friday, when the Blue Jays had their first game against the Red Sox of that series, and they had what was it, like 7 or 8 run inning or something like that. I don't remember the details of it, but I was also contemplating putting that on my board. But the very fact that I can't remember the exact details of it, it's probably an indication that didn't mean as much to me as some of these other games. So I didn't put it on my board eventually. But this 9-8 game with the George Springer walk-off, that was definitely on my list because as I was combing through these games, I came across a few highlights of that, and just the crowd shot and the crowd noise from that moment was definitely special. So that's a good pick.
I mean, I hate to admit it, but that was going to be part of my next pick. So unfortunately, I have to scramble now because I'm doing back-to-back. However, one of the other picks from, of course, especially during that homestand, or it was the 1st September of 2021. I'll go ahead with my next pick now. I think you know where I'm going with this. The Oakland A's are in town, and we all know how big of a series that was at the time, because at the time, the A's were, I think, actually ahead of the Jays. They were in that first wildcard spot, and we all know the comeback. And of course, to end it off, it was when Marcus Semien hit the walk-off over the Oakland A's. So for me, that will be my next pick. I mean, what better way to end it against your former team like that, to pretty much shatter at least the game as well. And what a comeback too. We know prior in the game, it was just crazy, the comeback that they did put together. And 2021 was the year of the comeback for the Jays. So Marcus Semien's game where he walked it off over the Oakland A's, his former team, that is my pick. And I'm very happy that was available. I'm actually surprised that it lasted this long, but clearly one of you guys, I'm sure, was close to getting to it. So
I would have taken that above the George Springer home run. That was on my board. I had them, I have them separated by year, and then within each year I have it ordered in terms of the games I want to take. And the Marcus Semien one was second on my board for 2021, and the George Springer home run was a couple ones down. So,
see, I did the same thing you did, but I actually I ranked the Springer one ahead, which is why I picked it. And I was going to pick the one that you just picked right in my next pick. Weirdly enough, the first game back in Toronto was above both of those two. I don't know, maybe that's not that outlandish of a pick, but I'll tell you what, and I got to do some scrambling because that was that's a good pick. I'm not gonna lie, but I was considering saying or also picking that and finding a loophole saying I'm talking about the Gurriel Grand Slam, but no, I think we'll count that as one because, I mean, to be fair, it was the same game, but I think that just shows how many good moments were in that game and easily how all three of us could have picked that one.
Yeah.
And we've now taken 3 consecutive 2021 picks. So it's interesting how we're all kind of thinking together in
Yeah.
terms of one domino falls, all the dominoes fall. But Bryson, you got another pick left.
Yes. And the perfect scenario would have been Springer, Simeon come back now again, because Jacob took it. Kind of have to re-scramble. But I think I'm going to extend the streak here of 2021. This will be my second pick from the 2021 season. And it is, of course, I'm sure you guys remember this game very well. September 12th, a doubleheader in Baltimore. One of the craziest 7th innings. And I guess in this case, we all know how doubleheaders were 7 innings, kind of equivalent to the 9th inning. One of the craziest, I think, swings in a game that we've ever seen before, especially, I guess, in recent memory. And for me, I look back and there was a lot of memorable comebacks, especially too from the 2018 season. There was a couple times that year where the Jays made some incredible comebacks. And again, each year they did. But this one for me was just insane because I felt like every single person on the team just continued to produce. And it started off with the Jays being no hit into the 7th inning, which was the final at bat of the game. And they go on to score 11 runs to clinch game 1 of the doubleheader. And again, we were at this point where we were talking about how it was a must win. It was on their schedule as must win games. And if they lost, we would have all been upset. And I think also the game before, there was a game where Hyun-Jin Ryu pitched. I think it was the day before, and the day lost that game. And we were here pretty much, a little disappointed that they lost that game. But yeah, it started off with the Hernandez single. I have it all here. A Kirk homer, Gurriel single, Grichuk single. You guys know George Springer single, Simeon homer. And basically everyone on the team contributed here. It led to an 11-10 win to keep the season alive again at the time. And that's why it will be my next pick and maybe my final pick from 2021. But I'm happy with these 2 back-to-back picks here.
I actually had the Sunday game, the 22-run game, on my board instead of the doubleheader because I thought that game was more notable than the doubleheader, but it's interesting.
See, now that you've picked another 2021 game, I kind of want to change things up a little bit, which
Well, we're running out of them now too.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, all 3 of mine are now gone.
Yeah, I only have 1 left on my board from 2021, so I might take that one next.
Okay, so so now that we've kind of exacerbated 2021, I'm going to go back a little bit to 2015 because I've used 1 and then I'm going to use 1 more and then that be it. I'm going to go with David Price's Blue Jay debut. That was, to me, the beginning of the competitive schedule, even though it wasn't that long, only maybe a couple of years. But to me, David Price comes to this Blue Jay team. It looked as if they were going to give a lot up for him. Daniel Norris, Matt Boyd, and I think Anthony Castro, maybe a couple others. But at that moment, the Blue Jays needed a rental. They'd already acquired Troy Tulowitzki, all these other players, but they finally got their ace, who was fantastic for him all season. But you have a packed house. He fans 11 over 7 innings, and he gets out of a bases loaded, nobody out jam. And to me, this was the beginning of what ended up becoming 2015 and 16. Blue Jays ended up winning that game. I don't think I've picked a loss yet, which will have to make things a little interesting in the next few rounds. But to me, this game, even if they ended up losing 2-1, David Price's Blue Jay debut coming to Toronto, being the ace that he was expected to be, it to me was easily the pinnacle of the competitive window.
I had it on my board. It was on the list. I didn't think I would end up picking it because it was pretty low down, just because I thought there was a couple more significant games from 2015 that I had on my list, but it was there. It's a good pick.
I agree. I was planning maybe if I could have snuck that in with one of my last 2 picks, but unfortunately, that's not the way it goes. But yeah, no, I do like that pick because that also was the signal of the turnaround. We know how fast tickets became sold out that afternoon against Minnesota, and it was pretty much the first time in a while. And I guess in that playoff drought from that gap, minus a couple other people, of course, like Roy Halladay, it was just that time, I guess, one of the first aces in a while that the Jays had. And that David Price at that time in 2015 during his prime was that guy for the Jays. So it just, the more you talk about 2015, it just brings up good memories, but at the same time, just disappointment how they didn't manage to get by that ALCS. But again, we're not going to talk about that game.
Yeah, and they were so close. But yeah. Okay, I guess now I have the wraparound pick. for what round are we on? Around the fifth round, I think. Yeah, fifth round, and then going into the sixth round with my second pick. I'm a little bit torn on this one, but I do like the idea. So far, I haven't taken 2 games from one season, so I'm going to keep that up, and I'm going to take a game from the 2018 season, which no one has done yet, and there were not a lot of highlights from this year. But I'm actually going to get a little bit creative and take a spring training game in 2018, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s spring training walk-off in Montreal. It's a 0-0 game, and Vladdy has, obviously he's got a lot of home runs in him and a lot more epic moments to come in his career, but the home run of a lifetime in the city he was born in the city his father played in for so many years, a city that means so much to him and his family. It's a walk-off home run and just a magical moment. And I think if we're talking about the value of having a diverse board, I think having a spring training game on there definitely contributes to that, because no one else is going to have a spring training game, because that's pretty much the only notable spring training game that you could ever come up with. So that's what I'm taking with that pick. I don't know if that was on your guys' board.
It was, as you can see from my reaction. So I'm actually getting a little bit starved for picks right now, if I'm being completely honest. But no, that's a good pick. I think we all had it, but dang, now I got to find another one.
See, I think Mark threw you under the bus here, because usually in fantasy drafts, when it's bigger, around like 10 to 12 people, you want to be in the middle. But in this case, because there's 3 of us, you're stuck here, because you're stuck making one pick, then I make 2, then Mark makes 2, and then, I can feel your pain, Jacob. But yeah, I mean, for me, I was hesitant, but it was on my list just because, and I guess it kind of goes back to what Jacob said about the Chris Coughlin dive. Like, we understand the moments compared, like moments versus the actual game. And just because if I'm trying to put the game factor into it because it was spring training, however, I do love the creativity, and I most likely would have probably picked that if it was available in the 7th round. But I really enjoyed that. And again, as much as Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s first home run in 2019 was a good signal, in 2018 especially, that was an even better signal, because this is a guy who hasn't played in the MLB yet. We knew he wasn't ready. And to cap off the final spring training game in Montreal, and it was the final spring training game in general, because the Jays obviously used to close out the spring over there. I thought that was one of the best ways to end it. And that clip as well, one of the most memorable moments from that season alone too, just because of how dark of a season that was. So that's why I do think, as much as it was a spring training game, just the factors that go behind the 2018 season make it more valuable than what it looks like.
Yeah. And if we're talking in context of my board, I'm happy that now I have 1 pick each from 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2021. I'm just missing those 2019 and 2020 years. So I'm happy that I've got that diversity on my board. And I'm also happy that, like, the type of game, spring training, but there is a diversity in the type of, I guess, like emotional tenor. If you look at my board, like, I think I have, the one criticism I would have in my board so far is that there's too many walk-offs, but I don't know. I'm pretty happy with how it's shaping up. And on that note, I'm a little bit torn about this pick between 2 different options. But I think one of them is probably going to go unpicked, and I can get it at better value with a lower round. So I'm going to select September 23rd, 2017, which is Jose Bautista's final home game at the Rogers Center. And this is a moment, Bryson, I know you've watched Ted Lasso. Jacob, you haven't yet, and you need to. And if anyone hasn't watched it, is listening to this, just like skip ahead a few minutes. I don't want to spoil anything. There's a point where a certain character is playing his final game on the field, and he's walking off, and they're all chanting his name. And it's a moment that makes me cry when I watch it, a couple times I've watched the series, because I always think of Jose Bautista's last home game as a Blue Jay at the Rogers Center, and when he walked off the field with a couple outs in the 9th inning and had that final curtain call as a Blue Jay. And it's just a really emotional moment that sticks in my mind a lot. And I think it's very different than the other picks that I have on my board so far. So I like the way that it kind of diversifies things for me.
I completely forgot about that one. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how I did, but man, honestly, that's a good pick. I think that easily, if I had it on my board, I probably would have been that guy that goes crazy and picks it first. But no, I don't know how I forgot about that one. I think I'm not out of 2017 picks as I'm looking here, but No, that's a pretty good pick. And also, it wasn't even just that last curtain call. Like at the start of the game, normally you don't see the players go on the field, but we saw instead of going to a commercial break, Bautista go on the field by himself without the rest of his teammates at the top of the first. So it was one of those games where you didn't want to watch it because you knew it was the end, but at the same time, you have to watch that because, as I made the joke many years ago, Bautista's given the outfield spot. At the time, he played right field, but giving that outfield spot to Teoscar Hernandez, who has now become a staple in this current team. But yeah, no, that was definitely. I don't know how that wasn't on my list, but it should have been.
It was on mine. It was closer to the bottom. I thought I was going to be able to get away with it within the next two picks. But yes, of course, we all know one of the best Blue Jays of all time, Jose Bautista. Unfortunately, that year was the last year for him there. And, that year alone, he struggled and he was injured a few times. So it's in that way, it sucked. But at the other way, just how all the memories and all the emotions that came pretty much to any Jays fan and him himself, that final game. It was just signs of a new chapter. Things were changing. We knew the minor league system was slowly being rebuilt, and we knew that a new generation of Jays were on the way. And of course, he was one of the last people to go because Encarnacion went that year as well, earlier in the year. Donaldson was traded that year as well. So pretty much all those big pieces from that last playoff run from 2015, 2016 were all gone, and or they were at least slowly going away. And Bautista was one of the final ones to go because he pretty much lasted the entire year before he moved on in 2018.
So I'm definitely, as I said, I'm getting a little starved for picks, but thankfully you guys have not taken a few that I've really been holding on to. And I actually haven't taken any from 2020 yet. So I'm going to take Nate Pearson's major league debut against the Washington Nationals, 5 scoreless innings, 2-hit ball against Max Scherzer of all people. And he struck out Trey Turner in his first major league hitter that he faced. And this was a game they ended up losing in extra innings. I think it was like 4-1 in the 11th or something like that. But to have one of your top prospects, your top pitching prospect, come up and match one of the best pitchers in all of baseball the year after he won the World Series. And I mean, obviously that doesn't say a ton, but to have Nate Pearson come up and despite the lackluster season from him, to have him come up, have him go through that service time manipulation, come up and be lights out in his first start. To me, that was easily one of the better moments because as we talk about with Bautista leaving, Nate Pearson, I think, was one of the last few of the current core to come up. And to be fair, he hasn't really made a name for himself as much yet in the major leagues, but this was like that last piece where it was like, okay, this is going to be a staple in our rotation and he's going to be here for a long time. And to have him come up and just be absolutely amazing in his first start against a good team, like the Nationals were a good team, to have him do that, that was, I think, one of my top moments of 2020.
Yeah, I mean, definitely wasn't on my list, I don't think, but I can see the argument though, and I can see again the creativity. I like it that way, that it's not on my list because it throws me off even more and it gets me thinking more. But Nate Pearson, we haven't yet seen his full potential. However, we've seen flashes of it, and I think that's why, especially in the 2020 year where we pretty much got half the season, more of it cut off, and we didn't really get a lot of baseball, and we got to see one of the top prospects in the game come up and make his debut. I think that definitely was one of the good starting points from that year as well.
Yeah, I didn't have it on my list. I think just because like I was thinking about putting like the Vladdy debut on my list. I saw the Bo Bichette debut and I was thinking about putting that on there and having that as an option. And even the Alek Manoah debut this past year at Yankee Stadium, that was, I think, of all these debuts, I considered putting that one on my list the most. But I think Nate Pearson, I don't know. I don't know if I like that pick, Jacob. I'm sorry to say. I just don't think he's had like the same importance to the team as a lot of other players do. And I know it was, I guess if you're thinking about just the game itself, like, yes, it's an entertaining game. Yes, 5 innings of 2-run ball against Max Scherzer of all people and the Nationals who are coming off World Series. Like the game itself, yeah, it's exciting. I don't know. I don't view it with the same kind of mystique as I do a lot of these other games I've picked.
Hear me out though. He was like one of the top prospects at the time.
It is true, yeah.
That still is technically.
Yeah, true. But the reason why I didn't pick the Manoah one or spoiler alert, I guess if that's not on my draft. To me, like that wasn't like I was hyped for that. Like obviously we had a whole segment on like Alek Manoah watch, but that was just a random like 7 p.m. tweet saying Alek Manoah is coming up. Whereas with Nate Pearson, we knew it was going to happen. We predicted that he was going to wait the first 7 days of the season or however many the service time manipulation took. Like we knew that was going to happen, and we knew that he was going to come up this year. And maybe you guys and everyone listening disagrees with me, but I think this was probably the most excited I had been for a Blue Jay prospect since Guerrero's debut, because we knew it was going to happen. Like it wasn't like Bichette where it's like, oh, maybe he'll come up this year or this month or whatever. Like we knew Nate Pearson was going to come up, and he did, and he didn't disappoint that game. Kind of disappointed in the performance since then, but it's not overly his fault. But I don't know. To me, like maybe it's not the best pick, but to me, I do think it's at the moment or at the time. Like if you were to ask me this in 2020, I think I would have still had the same opinion.
It's also the only pick so far from 2020, which I think is interesting. I don't know if that'll change. A weakness I will point out with that, I think, is that now you have 2 debuts on your draft board. You have David Price, who you took in the 5th round, and then you have Nate Pearson that you just took. So I think that's maybe a little bit of a weakness if I'm trying to poke holes in your team.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I still have a few left. I think that they won't be that bad.
Yeah. We got one more round after this. Well, Bryson is the last pick of the 6th round, and then we're going to the last round. So Bryson.
Yes, so this will be after these 2, I'm done. So I know my next pick, but the one for the 7th round, I want to try and be a little bit creative. So I'm going to try and go off the board for that one. But of course, for this one, I will go next. And hate to say it. I mean, well, I don't hate to say it, but Mark, you brought it up. No picks that was the only pick from 2020. And I will be announcing that I will not be choosing a game from that season just to, just because it's me, it's my last pick. So these will be the last you pick or I pick. So I just wanted to make that announcement. But anyways, I guess the next pick I'll go to, and for me, I mean, I guess we'll all break down what our definition was at the end of this. So I guess I'll save most of my reasoning for I think we all will for the end. But anyways, for my next pick, I will go to, and I believe I have used already, if I look at the draft board, I have used 2 games from 2021. So I'm down to 1 more, and that's it. So I will use my last one, and I will go from September 29th, 2021. The New York Yankees are in town. I'm there, which is why there's also some bias to this one. I'm sorry, but it's true. The Blue Jays come back and they win a crucial game thanks to a go-ahead home run from Bo Bichette in the bottom of the 8th inning. For me, this was one of the most exciting games of the year for anyone, no matter where you were. It was a back and forth game, the battle of pretty much that wild card spot, and that playoff run we know near those past couple of weeks was insane. It was the Jays, it was the Yankees, it was the Mariners, it was a whole bunch of teams, it was the Red Sox, and it just to see a 4-team wild card race and I guess the importance of that game alone made it one of the funnest games of the year for sure. You had a Jose Barrios start. He goes 6 innings, 3-run run. So he was pretty sharp for the most part. But again, it was just going back and forth. And in the middle of the game, Aaron Judge hit a sac fly, and Blue Jays killer Higashioka on the Yankees also got to go ahead or tied the game from that. So it felt like it was a good turning point in the game. It just felt like things weren't going to go or end well. Bo Bichette hits the go-ahead home run in the bottom of the 8th, and then Jordan Romano comes out, shuts the door in the 9th inning, and locks down the save. For me, that was one of the most, I guess, important and fun games and memorable games from that season alone, and I guess from these past couple of years, or these 2015 to 2021. So that's why I wanted to put it there too. And for Bo Bichette, who's a young player, he's going to have lots of those. It was one of his first moments this year, or of his career in the MLB, being that clutch and late in the game, and that's what we hope to see for the next foreseeable future too. So that's my pick for that one. And to end things off, I'll be a little bit more creative. I'm going to try to be. I don't know how creative it is to you guys, but I'll try. I'll go to August 29th, 2015. I believe that's the date. Edwin Carnaccione hits a hat trick home run over the Detroit Tigers, a 15-1 win. Now, this is the last pick in the draft, and usually the last pick, you can kind of throw anything out there. So I understand if this one you guys don't particularly agree with it or not. I just wanted to try and change things up because I have a lot of comebacks, and then I have a lot of, I guess, moments in terms of the playoffs. So that's why this is middle of the summer or end of the summer. Edwin Carnaccione We knew that the 2015 team was one of the best offenses in baseball, and Edwin comes out, hits a home run. Fans at Rogers Center do a hockey tradition. They throw hats on the field like it's an actual hat trick in hockey. So that's why, for me, that's one of the most memorable moments as well. And again, I was just trying to be as creative as I could be with the final stuff that we had here on the list. So that's why I will be closing off my draft with that moment. So I'm very confident, but again, we'll probably talk about it once you guys complete your selections.
I gotta say that is a strong draft, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think it's good value. Round 7. I was also thinking of the Michael Saunders 3-homer game
That was
on my list.
Yep.
I also came across the Kendrys Morales 3-homer game, which I completely forgot he even had one until I stumbled across a highlight. And I don't know how I forgot about that. I know I was messing with you guys. I also forgot that the Blue Jays had a 19-inning game that they lost against the Red Sox in 2019. Completely erased from my memory. I had no recollection of that happening. So that was part of the joy of doing all this. But yeah, I think that's a solid pick. It wasn't on my list, but it's a solid pick.
No, it wasn't on my list too. But now that you mentioned that Red Sox one, I just want to shame myself a little bit and point out how when you mentioned that game, there were probably 6 different games that I was thinking of. And so I had to do far more digging than I needed to figure out which game you were talking about, but definitely was an interesting game. However, I think to end this draft off, at least for me, I looked at this. I've picked one from every year except 2019, and I'm going to do that right now, actually. So on September the 7th or 17th, 2019, the Blue Jays win 8-5 over the Baltimore Orioles. However, the story of the game was Cavan Biggio hitting for the cycle, the third Blue Jay to do it. First Blue Jay that I think I've seen do it. I almost saw Justin Smoke do it in 2015, but we finally see Cavan Biggio hit for the cycle. And actually, he had 2 stolen bases in that game, just to add on to obviously the 4 hits, which is it's okay. It's not that crazy of a thing to do, but he's the first player to hit for the cycle and have 2 stolen bases in a game since Charlie Moore who did it in 1980, which almost 40 years later, and it hasn't been done. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. And for Cavan Biggio, again, he's not the flashiest guy in terms of numbers, at least not yet, but to come up and hit for the cycle in your rookie season, I think that's definitely a crazy thing to do. And just aids to one of the supporting arguments to keep him on this team. So for me, that's definitely going to close it out, because Cavan Biggio, just to do that, actually, he's not even the first Biggio to do that. Craig Biggio did it many years ago in his playing days, which Cavan Biggio didn't even know that he did that, which I thought was a little funny, but it definitely hitting for the cycle in your rookie season has to be one of the greatest things to see.
Yeah, I like that both of you guys are taking like personal accomplishments for the last 2 picks.
Are you going to follow suit, Mark? Or are you going to take a little bit of a different approach? Because because that Saunders one that you mentioned, like that was on my list too. I had the Guerrero game against the Nationals from April 27th. I don't know if that will be your last pick or not. Sorry if I spoiled it, but I had that.
I was thinking about it, but it's not.
Okay, good. So I was thinking like there was a lot of personal accomplishments that I had taken down that I was thinking about. But yeah, there was the Saunders hat trick that I was definitely considering. There was also the Donaldson hat trick from August 29, 2016. So there's a lot that I had down here. And the Manoah debut was one of them too. So I like it that Jacob followed suit, but I'm curious to see if Mark will change it or will he continue the tradition?
No, I'm going to go kind of along the same lines as some of my other picks. With the last pick of the draft, I'm going to take the 2021 All-Star game. I don't know if anyone else was considering that.
Wow.
But
I didn't know if we could.
That too.
I took a spring training game. I took an All-Star game.
One. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I just think you have like 4 Blue Jays at the All-Star game. You have 3 starters, which is the most starters the Blue Jays have had. I think it tied the franchise record, if I remember correctly. And then you also have, the first time Vladdy is on the national stage, aside from the home run derby. You have him hitting this mammoth home run. And we've talked about it before, but I just kind of love the call from Joe Buck, and we had Fernando Tatis mic'd up for that moment. I just kind of love that moment watching it. And then you also have the friendship that we saw between the four guys who were sent, and talked about this before, but the way they all kind of stayed on the field afterwards for the award ceremony and celebrated together. And then lastly, it's just kind of a coming out party for the Blue Jays as a whole. I think it's their defining moment of their arrival on the national stage and international stage in baseball. And I think it was really a moment where everyone kind of realized, okay, these Blue Jays are for real. Even if the Blue Jays didn't make it to the postseason this past year, I think it was a moment when people recognized they're for real. They got a crazy amount of talent, a crazy amount of young, entertaining talent, and they're a team to watch over these next few years. So that's why I picked it. I think I'm pretty happy with it. I originally planned to take it higher, but I thought I would gamble and save it for the last pick, and apparently it worked out.
I was contemplating that one so hard, but I couldn't figure out if we could, just because it was only like a couple players in it. But if I knew that you were going to pick it, I definitely would have snatched that one up earlier because it was a great moment.
Yeah, I didn't know, but at the end of the day, it's very creative. And unfortunately for Mark, you're making me miss Marcus Semien more and more by the time how much you're talking about it, because that was pretty special. And the All-Star game too, people have their thoughts on the All-Star game no matter what sport it is. Some, I guess, are more enjoyable than others, but for me, the MLB All-Star game's always been very fun compared to watching other sports' All-Star games. I think they do a really good job with the talent they have, and of course the home run derby. But yeah, that was just a special weekend seeing all those Jays there. And like you said, it was a record, so you get to see four different ones there. And of course, Bo Bichette snuck in near the end as a reserve, but that definitely counts. And of course, you have other people starting too. So a really good moment from the season. I was hesitant, but I did actually have it on my list with a question mark, not knowing if it was allowed or not. So I'm glad it, first of all, that somebody picked it, because I think that if it was left off, then one of us, or we could have maybe scratched our heads a bit saying, how come none of us took that? So that's why I think it was definitely a steal for the last pick.
I was hesitant, not because I thought I was breaking the rules, because I thought it was within the boundaries of the rules, but because I wanted to kind of steer clear mostly of 2021, because I thought there was going to be a lot of recency bias there with just us picking whatever games we thought were most entertaining from the last season. So kind of wanted to steer clear of that, but I couldn't avoid picking out the All-Star game. Okay, so now we're done. We've got all our picks. I'm going to recap them very quickly, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about who we personally thought maybe won, and then we can obviously throw it to the listeners and viewers. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment. If you are listening to this podcast, you can go to our social media and comment who you think won the draft. But okay, Bryson, you had the first pick overall. You went with the bat flip home run game. You went with Vladdy's first 2 career home runs in a game against San Francisco in May of 2019. You had the Blue Jays clinching the AL East in 2015. You had Marcus Semien's walk-off against the Oakland Athletics combined with Lourdes Gurriel Jr.'s grand slam earlier in that game in 2021. You had the doubleheader against Baltimore in 2021. And I guess we take both the games of that doubleheader. I guess that counts. No one else took it, so it doesn't matter. And then round 6 pick, you had the game against the Yankees, Bo Bichette homer in September of 2021. And your last pick, you had Edwin Carnaccione's hat trick in 2016? 2015?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Jacob, your board with the middle pick sandwiched in between the two of us. You had the 2016 wild card game with Edwin Encarnacion's walk-off. You had Chris Coughlin's slide/dive, which I think is the most interesting pick of this entire draft.
That's the one that I'm reconsidering.
Yeah. And then you had the another interesting pick, I'll say, the walk-off wild pitch against the San Diego Padres in 2016. You had the Blue Jays 9-8 win over Boston in 2021. You had the David Price debut. You had the Nate Pearson debut, and you had Kevin Biggio hitting for the cycle. So again, I think some interesting picks in there. We definitely went different directions with those first 2 picks. And then I had with the final wraparound pick, I had the 2016 ALDS Game 3 with the Donaldson Mad Dash. I had Steve Pearce's walk-off grand slam against the Angels, which was his second in 4 days. I had the 2021 Rogers Center home opener. I had the 2015 Marco Estrada near perfect game. Also had Vladdy's 2018 spring training walk-off in Montreal, Bautista's final home game as a Blue Jay, and then finally the 2021 All-Star game. So there you have it. There's all our boards. That's our team, if you will, that we pick out of this game of drafting the best Blue Jay games since 2015. So I guess I'll throw it to you guys. Who do you think won? If not yourself.
So if my second overall pick was a little different, I think there's a few that I could have rearranged there, but
do you regret that pick looking back at it?
You must.
I regret making it my second pick. I would have
Yeah.
switched. I would have still probably picked it maybe in the
I
last
think you
few
could've-
rounds.
Yeah, I think you could have left it for round 7 and got good value at round 7.
Yeah, I don't think one guy jumping over another guy constitutes a second overall pick, but I don't know. I think because of that, I might end up losing, but I don't know. Both other than that, I think all three of us had relatively equal boards for different reasons. But when your second overall pick is questionable at best, you might have me towards the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm what Mark said, like, or when he spoke about it after you picked the Colgan one, I guess that he made sense with it, more of that being more of a moment than a memorable game, which is why I definitely obviously question that as well. And I'm sure, and of course you do too. So, but you do have some good moments in there. That Springer one, like I mentioned earlier, that's actually a pick that I wanted. So, and I think too, Mark and I, our difference with our team, I think I think it is a little bit of a difference because we had different approaches from this one. I was more focused, I guess you were more focused on the diverse, like you said, of different years, which I think that makes your list very unique, first of all. And then for me, I didn't really truly focus on what year it was. I think obviously it was more centered around the good years in 2015. And I didn't actually have any from 2016. And I didn't have any from 2020. And I mentioned that I just, I don't know if you want to I get into it too much, but I just felt like as much as 2020 was different, it was unique. It was 60 games. It didn't feel right. Like it didn't feel the same. And now if you ask me, of course, at the moment of 2020, it would have been maybe more of a priority for me to choose one of those games. But after we went back to a regular year and a regular format the next year in 2021, it kind of devalued it a little bit. And it's nothing against the season because we knew with the times we were in, the times that we're still in, the challenges that they had, of course, the billionaires versus millionaires part 1 that is carried over to this year. It just doesn't feel right to me. And of course, winning a World Series in 60 games, thank God, as much as it's weird to say that, thank God the Jays didn't win that year, because if they did, it would be forever questioned with an asterisk. So that's one thing that I'm happy about. And of course, I picked a couple moments. I didn't pick anything from 2018. It was the dark days. I may have tried to cheat the system with you saying only one pick from that era, which is why I figured since it was one of the down years, I have to center it towards one of the good moments, and that is the future of the franchise, and that is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which is why I chose that, the home runs, and that was my only pick from that era. And the one thing too is I was actually going to pick a 2017 pick, but I felt like it would have been a recycled version of your pick, and it was the Steve Pearce thing, because we know we did it twice in the same week, and I would have felt like it would have been devalued. And it was nothing against you. It's just because it happened in the same week. And if you were choosing it, why would I choose something similar? So that's why I also wanted to be different. So that's something that I actually had planned, but then I had to kind of do a last minute change. And then of course,
were you gonna take it like higher on your board? Because I took it with my second pick.
I was going to take it around. It would have been
Okay.
2 or 3. It would have been, honestly, it probably would have been 2, because that was when I used the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. home run, and I always plan to use the AL East clinching game. So yeah, it would have been up there. So that's why I changed my mindset throughout. And that's the best part about a fantasy type draft, is you always got to rearrange and change at that point. So that's why I did that. And of course I prioritized around the good years of 2015 and 2021, just because I feel like it makes it more memorable. And that's why that was just my philosophy and my strategy of drafting my team, my reasoning for doing that. And of course, the last pick, just to be creative and do something different that I haven't done the previous 6 rounds.
Yeah, I think this might be one of the things that makes Jacob's draft actually one of the strongest, is the fact that he had the most diverse board year-wise, because I think I had every year except for 2019 and 2020. I took 2 picks from 2017, 2 picks from 2021. First off, I did not expect to take 2 games from 2017. I thought I would be one and done with those seasons, but I was pleasantly surprised. But Jacob, you had every season except for 2018. And then Bryson, I think this is one of the weaknesses with your board, is the fact that you have 3 picks from 2015, 3 from 2021, and then just 1 from those middle years. And again, like I said, I tried to steer away from 2021 because I didn't want to have that recency bias. So if I was trying to poke holes in your board, I think that's what I would say. But I'm pretty happy with my board, how it turned out. I think, I don't know, I like the diversity of it. I like the creativeness with the All-Star game and the spring training walk-off. Although I think the fact that I took 2 of those kind of novelty games is a little bit of a knock. And I also think I was trying to go for like different emotional tenor games, like different, I don't know, this is getting kind of in the weeds, but I was looking for games that are different emotionally. And I think the fact that I drafted both the Rogers Center home opener and the Bautista final home game, those kind of, like, they're obviously different. Like, one is celebratory, one is kind of like the end of an era, but I think they kind of struck the same tone, and that you don't remember it so much for the game itself, but for the, I guess, moment that was happening around it, if that makes any sense. So I think those are 2 similar picks as well, but I'm pretty happy with my board.
See, I actually forgot about 2018, and I have a few decent picks. I have one from earlier in the year when Kevin Pillar stole 3 different bases and then ended up stealing home. It was like a failed pickoff attempt, and then he ended up going home. I had the Marcus Stroman. Was that no? That was 2017. So I had in the 2018. I had Estrada's standing ovation in Seattle, and then Mike Bolsinger. So I was going to pick this, but when he had 4 strikeouts in an inning, but
Mike Bolsinger is the same guy who is suing the Astros for having a horrible.
Mhm.
I thought you were, when you said Mike Bolsinger,
No.
I thought you were thinking that. I was like, what?
Well, yeah. See, that's why I didn't pick it, because like I think it's cool as like a stats kind of junkie, but I really don't think a lot of other people remember that type of moment.
I think another pick, maybe along the same lines, Thomas Hatch had an immaculate inning.
Oh yes,
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what year that was, but I think it was 2018.
Was it 2020, or am I completely wrong on that?
May have been. I don't know. Anyways, that's another thing along the same lines of the Bolsinger 4 strikeout. Anyways.
Yeah. Bolsinger, last time we spoke about him was suing the Astros. So I was like, is Jacob talking about Mike Bolsinger suing the Houston Astros is one of the top moments, but that would have been really hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the way you look at it too. The fact that it's his games, that made it, I guess, easy for us to approach things differently. And, you call it a hole in my team, and that's completely fair because your mindset was to be a little bit more diverse and kind of spread the wealth a little bit. For me, I wanted to target those games that people will remember regardless of what year it was. And those were the fun years. So that's why that was my reasoning for that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to throw a couple honorable mentions that I had on my list, actually from 2018 that likely I wasn't going to pick, but if I did, it would have been near the end. It was actually coincident or kind of funny. It was off of George Springer in 2018. It's when Randall Grichuk made that game-saving catch. But again, it goes to Mark's questioning of the Colgan pick. That's a moment, not a game, even though that saved the game for the Jays, and that was the reason why they won that game. So there was some consideration there. I guess we'll reveal the details behind the scenes on my draft board. But yeah, I mean, another game I had that was very memorable was Canada Day of 2016, the Vic Carapazza versus Edwin Carnaccione, like beef in the first inning, and then it was 19 innings. Ryan Goins pitched. That was memorable just because of how crazy and odd it was. It wasn't, a great moment in Jays history. It was just one of the most bizarre games. So I had that on. I had Bo Bichette walking it off over the Yankees in 2019. It was a September game. And the one moment I did have from 2020 that failed to make the final cut, obviously, was when the Jays put up 10 runs in the 6th inning in a 12-7 win over the Yankees. The first time at double digits, the Jays scored double digits in a single inning since August of 2010. So that was one I guess I had. And that would have been one of the most fun games of that season in 2020. So other than that, though, I think most of you guys chose, I guess, that what was on my board. Obviously in the middle rounds, there was a lot where it wasn't on my board, but yeah, I mean, those are just a couple honorable mentions that almost made the final roster.
Did either of you guys have Bo's 5-hit game just quickly against Miami last year?
That I did not.
2020, I mean. I did.
Wait, what day was that? Do you know what day it was?
I think it was
or
August.
What the final score was?
It was the 14-11 one where they ended up losing.
Yes,
but it was
did
like,
have that on my board. I did not have it on my board because of Bo's performance. I had it on my board just because it was a wild game. but I did have it.
Yeah, see, I wanted to use it, but it was either that or the cycle with my last pick. But yeah, I just wanted to know because that was definitely a highlight for me.
One thing quickly, this was also kind of cool because it was in 2019. And I guess speaking of Bichette, did you guys ever get close to having when he took Clayton Kershaw deep twice? I don't know if you guys ever put that as one of your finalists, but it did not make my final one. It was kind of an early one. It was just, I guess, one of the bright moments from 2019 is that he took Kershaw deep twice in the single game in LA. So I don't know if you guys had that on there, but I was just wondering.
Forgot completely about that.
Yeah, me too.
I had his debut, not that one.
Yeah, the debut I was thinking of. The other ones I had on my board that I didn't pick, I had Game 6 of the 2015 ALCS. And yes. I know that might be a curious pick, but it just lives in my mind because there was a Bautista home run earlier in that game that I remember. Was there two? Wow.
Yeah, he scored all three of the runs.
Wow. I thought it was a memorable game, but apparently not. I don't remember the details, but that's one of those games that obviously not a great outcome. And Bryson, you mentioned, let's stop talking about that 2015 year. And I was so tempted right after that to take the 2015 Game 6 of the ALCS, but I didn't. I also had the, in 2018, September 20th, a 7-run comeback in the 9th inning against the Rays. The Blue Jays scored 7 runs, including a Justin Smoke walk-off home run. And then another pick I had was 2019 15-inning game with Anthony Alford walk-off. It was his first career homer. Vladdy's debut, we talked about that. The Miami Marlins 14-11 game, 10-run inning against the Yankees. And that's all the ones that I had on my board that I didn't pick. So we were thinking along the same lines with some of those. But I think once you get past like the first round where we had the 1, 2, 3 all down for all of us, the same pick, I think once you get past that, it definitely opens up.
Yeah, that was the opening of the floodgates there. I mean, again,
yes.
The highlight for me, the turning point was the Coughlin pick. I don't mean to pick on you, Jacob, but once you did that, I just started wondering, I'm like, did I approach this right? But then Mark immediately gave the same face I took. And I'm like, okay, maybe that was just more on Jacob's fault.
Yeah, that one, we might have to edit that one out. So if if there's a random 30-second just blankness in the video, then we're just going to pretend that pick didn't happen.
Why did Jacob not make a second?
Yeah, I want to go back and see our reaction again. I got to see that again. Both you and I, Mark, we had the very similar face.
I'll tell you what. Well, as a 7th overall pick, as a 7th pick, that would have been good. But 2nd overall, yeah, yikes. No. Moving on though, cue the outro.
Yeah, everyone can let us know what they think about each of our boards, what they think about Jacob's curious 2nd round pick, about who they thought won. Give us your thoughts, and hopefully it is me. But on that note, let us know if you enjoyed this. Let us know if you enjoyed this type of drafting. Again, it's our first time doing it. I'm sure there's some wrinkles in this process that we're going to iron out if we ever do it again. But if you guys enjoyed it, let us know, and we'll keep doing it throughout the off season. Until then, as always, you can support our podcast on Patreon. That's patreon.com/section138pod. You can find our podcast on YouTube if you like to listen to our episodes. Normally, you can find them on YouTube. If you like to watch them normally, you can also find them wherever you find podcasts. And you can support us on social media. We're at section138pod, Twitter, Instagram, and you can leave your thoughts there on the drafting as to how it went. And until then, if you have any ideas for future drafts we should do, let us know. We'll catch you next week.
All eyes on the mound and the bearded Sam Dyson. Now he comes set. Kicks the 1-1 pitch. Fly ball deep left field. Yes, sir. There she goes.